Assalamu alaikum students, this is Farwa Batool, your O-level computer science instructor, and welcome to another video. In this video, we are going to see standard method for maximum, minimum, and average. Yes, this is number 3 method. We have already seen totaling and counting methods, and in this video, I'm going to tell you maximum, minimum, and average standard methods in detail. So, starting with the maximum one, the maximum method is basically used to calculate. Let me write it over here. Maximum standard method is used to find largest number in a given list of numbers. Number in a list of numbers. And similarly, if you want to find out the minimum or the smallest value in the list of numbers, then you can use the minimum standard method. We will see the working or the programming of it as well. Is used to find the smallest number in a given list of numbers. These are very much frequently used in programming in different algorithms. And the last one is the average method. The average standard method is used to find out the average number in a given list of numbers. List of numbers. So yes, these are the basic definitions for each of these standard methods. Now, I am quickly moving towards the code for maximum and minimum method, and we are going to dry run it by using some data set. Okay, so here we go. This is the code for maximum and minimum standard method, but before explaining you this, let me assume a list of numbers that has 5 values. Okay, so let's just do it like this. If it is from a range of 0 till 100, 100 would be my maximum value and 0 is the minimum value. So let's suppose in a given list of numbers, I have 5 different values. That is 25, 75, 32, 68, and 95. So these are my 5 different numbers in a list. Now I need to find out the highest and the smallest value in my list. I know that the highest value here is 95. And the smallest value here is, okay, let me just do it here. Changing it to 25 and changing it to 32. So the smallest value is at number 3. Third value is my smallest value. And last value is my largest value. So now let's see from this given code how we are going to find out this smallest and largest value that we can clearly see in a given list of numbers. But you don't know this list, and the number of values in a list can vary. It depends upon your data set. And every time you don't know that what is the smallest and what is the largest value. So you must have to define a code for that so that you will get the smallest and largest value as quick as possible. Okay, so starting with the first line of code here, we have a maximum mark variable and we have a minimum mark variable. Okay, two variables are there, the maximum mark. Okay, let me tell you that what is the scenario. Basically, what we are doing, we have a class size of, let's suppose, 5 students because we have assumed 5 values. So the class size will be, in my case, I'm assuming that there are 5 students in my class, and these are basically the marks 32, 75, 25, 68, 90. These are the marks of each of my student in a class. Okay, so I have, let's suppose this, I can name this list of numbers as student mark. So let me write it over here. Instead of 5 values, the list of numbers is named as student mark, and it contains marks of my 5 students. The class size is of 5. And now, to find out the maximum mark attained and the minimum mark attained by a student, we need to set two variables first. The maximum mark variable is set to 0, the minimum value, so that when we will get the maximum mark, we will replace the 0 from a maximum marks. And meanwhile, the minimum mark variable is set to 100, that is the largest value possible to attain by a student. The largest marks that a student can attain is 100. So we will replace it with a minimum value when we will find out one by one in a list of numbers. Okay, so these are two variables we set. Remember, maximum mark is set with the smallest value and minimum mark variable is set with the highest possible value or possible mark that can be attained by a student. Now, here we go. This is your for loop. We know that for loop is an iterative loop and it starts with 1 until the class size. Why? Because we have to see mark for each student. So it will go from 1 to 5. For every student, it is going to check the mark. Now, inside my for loop, let's do it in iterations. I'm writing it here, iteration 1. Okay, in my first iteration, when I go inside the for loop, the value of my counter is 1. And when I go inside, I'm going to check for if student mark counter is greater than maximum mark. Let me explain you what is this actually. It is saying that student mark, let me just replace the value of counter here, that is 1 in my case for iteration number 1. So I'm writing instead of counter, let's suppose it is student mark 1. If it is greater than maximum mark, then what you have to do, you have to put this value in the maximum mark variable. So let me just quickly tell you what is this. I'm writing it here. We need to check first student mark counter, and counter value is 1 right now. So it means that you have to check for student mark 1. Here in my list of number, student mark at index 1, this is for first student, is 32. So I'm going to write down student mark for the index 1 or the first student is 32. What I will do, I will check if this value is greater than maximum mark. So let me write it over here. If this value is greater than maximum mark means for maximum mark, I have set this value to 0 previously. So I can replace it with a 0 value. So here my condition becomes true. Yes, the maximum mark value is less than student mark. So in this case, what you have to do, you have to place student mark index 1 value in maximum mark. So maximum mark is going to be replaced with a value 32. Because this value, if the condition is true, then this value needs to be set in maximum mark. So here we go. This is what actually the for loop if statement, this if statement is saying us. Now, we are done with this if statement. Now we will do this one, the second one. We also have to set the minimum mark variable. If student mark counter, you will see is less than minimum mark. So we will do it together one by one. Here. Again, the student mark is, we know the student mark for index 1 is 32 and if this value is less than your minimum mark value is 100. Since this condition is true, it's also true. Your minimum student mark is less than 100. So what you have to do, you have to set your minimum mark variable with the student mark value. So the minimum mark variable will become 32 now instead of 100. I'm just putting down the values in the respective variables and finding out if the condition is true or false. And if my condition is true, so remember you have to obey this line or you have to fulfill then statement. Now we are done with this, the first thing. Now quickly moving towards iteration number 2. Okay, let me just make a line over here to make our work neat and clean, and then quickly moving towards iteration number 2. In iteration 2, what will happen? Now the counter value will change to 2. And similarly, you have to see for student mark value, sorry for this. Now the student mark value for index number 2 will be observed. The student mark value for index number 2. Let's see in the list. In my list for number 2, index number 2, it is 75. So I will write 75 here. And then I will check for the first condition. Inside my for loop, the first if condition says that if this value is greater than maximum mark value. So I will see if this value is greater than maximum mark value. The maximum mark value will be copied from the first iteration from here. So maximum mark is set to 32. I will put it here 32. So look, now the condition is true. Why? Because yes, 75 is greater than 32. So in case the condition is true, your maximum mark will be changed. So maximum mark variable will change to this value, that is 75. Now similarly we will do for the minimum mark value here. Remember that the student mark for index number 3 has a value 75. Now we will see if this value is less than the minimum mark. You have to take the minimum mark value from iteration number 1 here. So we will be putting 32 instead of minimum mark for the comparison. So let's see if the statement is true. No, 75 is greater than 32. So this condition is false here. 32 is not greater than 75. So in false condition, your minimum mark value will not be replaced with student mark index number 2. So it will remain same as in first iteration. So it is 32. Now quickly moving towards our third iteration. I'm doing all the 5 iterations so that we will get the final result and we will see if the result matches our findings or not. Now, quickly moving towards iteration number 3. I hope now you understand that what we have to do in each iteration. In iteration number 3, every time when we have another iteration, the counter value increments. Because this thing here, next counter means that the counter is going to increment its previous value or it will be +1 in the previous value. So now the counter value changes to 3 for iteration number 3. We need to check for student mark counter, that is 3. So in index number 3, let's find out what is our value. So for the third student, we have a value 25 in my list, and remember that this is the smallest value. So yes, write it here 25. Now for the maximum mark, we will see that if this value is greater than your maximum mark, and the maximum mark value will be taken from the previous iteration. It was 75. So put 75 here, check for the condition. The condition is false. Why it is false? Because 25 is not greater than 75. So when the condition is false, you are not going to run then code. Instead of that, the maximum mark variable will remain same as in second iteration. So its value remains same, that is 75. Now moving towards the second part, that is for minimum mark. Again, look at student mark value for index number 3. You will check if this value 25 is less than your minimum mark value. So the minimum mark value will be replaced from here, previous iteration, and this one is 32. So I'm going to replace this minimum mark here with its previous value, that is 32, in my second iteration. And then what I will do, look at here. 25 is less than 32. The condition is true. So in true condition, you have to replace the value of minimum mark variable. Its value will be set to this student mark 3 value. Remember that you are only going to change the value of maximum mark variable and the minimum mark variable when your if statement or if condition becomes true. If it is false, then you have to set it to the previous value, or it will remain same as in previous iteration. Okay, there will be no change in maximum or minimum mark value when the if condition is false. Now quickly moving towards our fourth iteration. Let's make a line to differentiate, and then starting with iteration number 4. Remember that for every iteration, the value of counter is going to change. Now it will be 4, and you are going to observe for student mark index number 4. So student mark at index 4 is, let's see that in our data, at 4 it is 68. So we will write down 68 here. Now for the first condition, we will see if this value is greater than the maximum mark value. Okay, so the maximum mark value will be taken from the previous iteration, as this variable is 75 now. So we will see if the condition is true or false. 68 is greater than 75. No, it's false. It's not greater. So in false case, your maximum mark variable will remain same, that is 75 in previous iteration. Now quickly moving towards the minimum mark variable. In iteration number 4, as the student mark value is at index 4 is 68. Now you will check if this value is less than the minimum mark variable, and the minimum mark variable has a value of 25 in previous iterations. So I'm going to replace it with 25. Now I am going to check for the condition. Is 68 less than 25? No, it's false. Since it is false, so your minimum mark will remain same, that is 25. It was in iteration number 3. Now the last iteration, and this will be the final iteration. After that, we will see that what are the maximum and minimum values for our given list of numbers. Okay, here we go. Iteration number 5. The counter value is now changed to 5. And now we will be looking at fifth value in our student mark list or array. Student mark at index number 5 is equals to, let's see the value at index number 5 here, which is the maximum value, 95. We will write it here 95, and we will check if this value is greater than the maximum mark variable value. So maximum mark variable is 75 in our previous iteration. I'm going to replace it with its value, that is 75. Now I'm going to check for the condition. Is 95 greater than 75? Of course it is. So you have true condition. In this case, your maximum mark variable will change with the value in student mark index 5. So it is changed to 95. Now for the minimum mark variable, again we will observe the student mark variable first. That is for index number 5, it is 95. Okay, now we will see if this value is less than the minimum mark or not. If it is less than minimum mark, then you have to change the value. The minimum mark value in the previous iteration was 25. So we will put this value here instead of the name of variable. Now we will check for the condition. Is 95 less than 25? No, it is false. The condition is not true. That's why the minimum mark variable will remain same. So in this way, you have seen that what you have to do if the condition is true and if the condition is false. So now the final values for the maximum mark is 95 and for the minimum mark is 25. Let's confirm it from the list of numbers. Here we go. Yes, for the smallest or the minimum mark, it is 25. And for the largest or maximum mark, it is 95. So we are done with the data set. Now your data can be changed, can vary, and your code will remain same for no many. It doesn't even matter that how many numbers you have in a list or how long it is. The code will remain same. It will check for 100 numbers, 200 numbers, or 1000 numbers, or so on. It is going to tell you maximum mark value and the minimum mark value from your given list of numbers. Now, we have another way of doing it. Let's suppose you don't know that what is the smallest possible value. Like in our previous case, we assume that the smallest mark, or we know that the minimum mark that a student is going to get will be 0. And the maximum mark that a student will get will be 100, as 100 was the highest mark. 0 till 100 was your range of marks. So this is known for the first case. But let's suppose you don't know that what can be the smallest possible value or what can be the highest possible value that a student can attain. So in that case or in that particular list of numbers where you don't know what can be the smallest possible value or the largest possible value, so you can do one thing. You can set both variables to the first value. So this is the code for the situation that I am saying here, that in this case what you can do if you don't know the minimum possible value or the maximum possible value, so you can set both these variables to the first value in your list of numbers. Student mark 1, this is the first value in your list of numbers. You can set this value to both the variables, the maximum mark or the minimum mark. So in our case, the list of number, the first value here is 32. So what we can do, we can set both the variables the value 32 instead of 0 and 1. This is only when you don't know the maximum or minimum possible value. So you set it to your first value in your list of numbers, 32, 32. And then you are going to start your comparison with the second value in your list because the first is already set in the variables. So these variables are now going to be compared with second value and onwards. Just look at here. So your counter will start from 2 till 5. So this is how we can change our work depends upon our situation, but the other code will remain same. You will check for if condition and you have to change the maximum mark variable and the minimum mark variable whenever your condition becomes true. So everything will remain same, only the assignment of the variables will be different in this case. So these are the two different methods to find out the maximum and the minimum values in the given list of number. Now I am quickly moving towards the third standard method in this heading, that is the average method. The average method is going to help you to find out the average number in a given list. So I'm quickly moving towards the line of code that is in your book, and then I'm going to explain it with a given data set. Okay, so here we go. This line of code is going to help you out to calculate the average of a given list of numbers. So the first part is just same as your totaling part. If you don't remember, in my previous video, I have told you that how you can calculate total for a given list of number. So if you want to see that, it's better for you that go ahead, watch that totaling video first and then move towards here because I'm not going to explain it again in this video. This part will remain same. Till here, I have already explained in my video of totaling. That was the first standard method. Now, when we will calculate the total of a given list of number, let's assume my list of number was, let's just quickly see that list of number here. So that was 32 plus 75 plus 25 plus 68 plus 95. So let's suppose we worked on the totaling algorithm first and we have got a total of 295. So this is a total of 295 for my given list of numbers. Now what will I do once I get the total value? 295. Then this is very simple that you will calculate the average value by dividing that total value with the class size. So for my example, the class size was 5. So the average value will be calculated as 295 divided by 5, which is equals to 59. So this is how we are going to calculate average value. So remember that average value or average standard method is basically a combination of totaling method plus the average calculation formula. So this is how you are going to calculate the average of a given list of number. And for knowing that how to get a total of given list of number, please watch my previous video. So you will get a clear understanding of how we are getting 295. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that this video helped you a lot. And if you have any questions, any queries, you can comment below. Definitely, I'm going to help you as much as I can. Stay tuned, stay connected. Do not forget to subscribe. Bye bye.